Hi, welcome to the Acolyte Digital Thought Leadership Series. I'm your host Shrikant Palle and I head marketing for Acolyte Digital. I have with me Gaurav Khatri, who's going to speak on GraphQL in practice. Without much ado, over to you, Gaurav.
Okay, hello everyone. This is Gaurav Khatri. I am Technical Delivery Manager at Acolyte, and I have hands-on experience on app modernization and enterprise architecture. And thank you all for joining the session. And in today's talk, I will speak on the GraphQL in practice. And during this session, I will discuss about the introduction to the GraphQL, and in this we will try to explain like what is the GraphQL, and after that we will follow the data model, how the data model is represented in terms of graph, and followed by we will discuss like what is the difference between the RESTful API and the GraphQL API. And after that, we will see some of the GraphQL terminologies and followed by some live coding example. In this, I will try to write one resolver query and one mutation query. And for this, I will take the use case of customers and its orders. And after that, we will see like where we can say no to the GraphQL. And I want to keep the question answer session in the end. Okay. So without wasting a time, let's start with the introduction to the GraphQL. So as per the definition, GraphQL is in the simplest term is a query language for the API and server-side runtime for fulfilling these queries using the existing data sources. And these data sources can be further anything like a database or any API, right? So we have seen like how we can explain the GraphQL in the simplest term, right? Now I want to like further describe the GraphQL in a simple 3 steps using the above image. So in that image, we have like 3 steps. In first step, we will describe our data. So in this, we will write the schema, and this schema will be the client server contract. And this client server contract will help us to like write what are the query are being supported and what are the data fields we can fetch out of this. So over here, we have took the example of the project in that we have the name and tagline as a data type, and we have the string as a data type. And after that, we will write a GraphQL query. And in this, we have written one query. In this, we want the project using one filter called named as GraphQL, and in return, we want the tagline in the data field, right? And after that, we can expect the data as per the query. So we can see like we got the project of GraphQL, and we got only tagline in the response. So till now, like we have discussed what is GraphQL, and when we first see the GraphQL, then first question come here, like what is the relation of the data and the graph, right? So in the next section, I will like try to explain using the simple example. And for this, I have took the example of the book and its author and the publisher. And looking this ERD diagram, we can simply say like book is associated with many authors, like one author can write the many books, and one book can be written by many authors. So the relation is ultimately many to many, and then the book can be published by one publisher. So the relation is from publisher to book is one to many. So this is how the ERD diagram will look like. And the same can be represented in terms of graphs. So graph is nothing but a kind of container which holds all the data nodes, and those data nodes are connected with each other similar to the SQL databases, right? So over here, I will take the example of the clean code, which is associated with Princeton Hall at the publication. And then again, it is associated with Robert Martin as the author. And this author has written another book called Agile Software Development. So this is how the data will look like in terms of graph, right? And then we can write the query. So for that, I have written one query, and further we can read this query in simple English terminology, like give me a book with ID called clean code, and in return I only want name and authors, and in authors I only want name, and books, and in books I only want the name. So this is how we can write the query, and this is how we can read the query. And once we write the query, we will submit the query to GraphQL engine, and then we can predict the data as per the query. So we can say like we got the book called clean code, and in authors we got the Robert Martin, and other books called Agile Software Development. And further, this data can be represented in terms of graph graph. Okay, so over here we can say like clean code is associated with Robert Martin, and Robert Martin has written the Agile Software Development as a other book. So over here, like we saw like how the data model can be represented in terms of graphs. So this is how the data will look like in the graph. So now we will move on to the next topic where we discuss the difference between the RESTful APIs and the GraphQL API. So to explain this, first I will try to go with the data fetching with the RESTful APIs, right? And for this, I have took the example of the users, its followers, and its posts. Okay, so so we all know like in the RESTful API, the common philosophy is to write the different endpoints for the different data sources. So over here we have 3 data sources in terms of users, is posts, is followers, right? So in the end, we will be writing the different endpoints. Like for user, we will write one user endpoint, and for the post, we will write one post endpoint, and for followers, we will be having the followers API. Okay, now I will take the example. Let's say we want to consume these RESTful API from the UI, and over there we have the dashboard, and on dashboard we only want to show the user's information in terms of name and email ID. Okay, and one more thing I want to tell you, like the RESTful API returns the data in terms of fixed data structure. So over here we can see like there are other data types in terms of address, birthday. So once we hit this particular API, we will get all the data which we have defined in terms of user API. So to get the actual data out of this, UI have to like pass all the data and have to get the desired data out of this. So it creates the overfetching issue. And top of this, sometimes if we have the low network bandwidth, then it will create some issues. Okay. And apart from this, let's say we have another use case where we have the user details page. So over there, we will also want some other details in terms of posts and followers. So to get the data, so to get those details, UI will be forced to hit another endpoints in terms of posts and followers. So it also creates the underfetching issue. Means like if we want the final representation of data, then UI needs to hit more than one API endpoints. So these are the two the main issues if we consume the RESTful API directly from the UI. Apart from that, let's say I change the UI model, then there is a high risk, like there will be the less or more data will be required than previous. Okay, and apart from this, to accommodate, we have to adjust the RESTful APIs as well. So over here, we can say like the UI and the middleware team can't work independently, and ultimately it impacts the rapid production iteration. So these are the like 3 issues we have in terms of RESTful API if we try to consume it from the UI. Okay, and next I will like I want to discuss about the GraphQL terminologies. So in GraphQL we have like 3 basic terminologies: query, schema, and the resolver. So in query we have further 3 sub steps. One is the resolver query, and this help us to fetch the data, and mutation query, which help us to do DML operation or modify or update data, and subscription will help us to write the real-time API if we have that kind of requirement. So over here we can see like we have the front end is submitting the query, and it's going to the GraphQL engine, and we are getting the data out of this. And in terms of mutation, if we submit the mutation query, GraphQL will process that query, and we will get the output out of that. So this is how the query of the GraphQL, and then there is a terminology called schema. So we have already discussed, this is nothing but client server contract, which keeps both the party in sync. And apart from this, it also helps us like what are the queries are being supported by the GraphQL, and what are the data fields are there. So end user can consume those things from the UI end. And then we have the resolver. So these are nothing but the function which are associated with each and every fields to get the data for those particular fields using the existing data sources. And apart from that, this resolver function also help us to do some kind of analytics, like let's say what are the fields which are used frequently and what are the fields which are not used at all. So on the basis of that, we can mark some of the fields as a deprecated one and apart from this, the resolver function also help us to optimize the GraphQL query. And during the live coding example, I will explain like how the resolver function can be utilized to optimize the GraphQL query. And this is the architecture of the GraphQL, where we have the GraphQL server and we have the one end user which is submitting some query. GraphQL engine will first verify that query and then process that query, and we will get the data out of this. So this is how the GraphQL terminology which I wanted to explain. Now next, we will talk about the code. So over here, like I am taking the example of customer and orders. And in this, we will try to write one resolver query in terms of customer. And in the resolver query, we will also utilize the resolver function to optimize this particular query. Apart from that, we will also write one mutation query, which will help us to add some new customer. And for this, I will be using a Java, Spring, Hibernate, and S2DB as a technology stack. Okay, and to quickly set up the project, we will head on to Spring Initializer web portal. And over here, we will select some of the configurations. So for this, I have selected Gradle as a building tool, and I selected the Java, and I have provided some configuration in terms of like what is the artifact name, what is the package name, and I have selected Java 17 as a programming language, and then I have added some of the dependencies. And to save the time, I have already exported this project and downloaded all the dependencies so that we can save the time. Okay. Now, let's move to the ID. Once we have all the things in place, and we can open that project using our any of the IDs. So for this, I am using the IntelliJ over here. So before I start writing the code, so I just wanted to explain like what are the dependency I am using over here. So first dependency is Spring Boot Starter Web, which help us to write the blocking web service on the blocking IO. And the second one is the Spring Boot Starter Data JPA, which will help us to perform the database operation using the Hibernate ORM. And then I am using the Liquibase dependency. This will help us to perform some database scripts in terms of DML and DDL. And then I'm using the Lombok dependency. This will help us in terms of Java POJO. So people who are from the non-Java background, so Java POJO are nothing but plain Java objects, which has only properties in that. And this Lombok dependency will help us to write some helper function out of that. And one of the most important dependency, this is like GraphQL Spring Boot Starter. So currently this is in the experimental phase, and I have choose this particular dependency for this live coding session because I wanted to show you like how we can write the GraphQL schema and how we can like write the corresponding Java implementation. But if we want to develop the GraphQL API in production, so we have another alternative, which is the SPQL library, and we can leverage this SPQL dependency. And by using this dependency, we don't need to write the GraphQL schema separately. We can leverage the POJO to generate the schema. But for this session, I am sticking with this particular dependency so that I can show you like how we can write the corresponding schema and the corresponding implementation. And once we have this dependency at the class path, then the GraphQL schema should be present at the GraphQL directory, and that directory should be at the class path. And if we want to change that path, then we can provide that custom path using the Spring Boot configuration, and that configuration can be provided like this: spring.graphql.schema.location, and in this location we can provide the custom path. So over here I have moved the GraphQL directory into the config, so I have provided something like this. Sorry. Okay. And apart from this, we have some other configurations, so we will discuss about those configuration later in the phase. Okay, so now we are good to go with the programming example. So for now, I will try to write one GraphQL schema. So since we are writing the GraphQL API for the customer, so I will give the name of the file as a customers, and I will give the extension as a GraphQLS. So make sure we have this extension either GraphQLS or GQLS. So these are the two endpoints are being supported by this particular dependency for the GraphQL schema file. Okay, so now let's create this file. And since we are creating a resolver query first, so to create that resolver query, we will use one keyword called type and followed by the query, since we are writing the graph resolver query over here. Okay, and then I will write the customers as a GraphQL query, and this will return the customer collection. And I'm demarking as a non-nullable using the exclamation mark. And now we have to further redefine the customer data type. So let's redefine the customer data type as a type of customer. In this, I will have some of the property called, let's say, ID as ID. So this ID is nothing is similar to the SQL database's primary key. And then I will have the name as string of data type of string, and I'm also want to make it non-nullable. Then I will have the email as again as a string, and I also want to make it as a non-nullable. Then I will have orders. So customer can have orders. So I will return the collection of order, and I won't demark as a non-nullable because customer can live with and without orders. Okay. Now let's define the order data type. So again, we will define the order data type using the type keyword order. And in this, again, we will define some of the property called ID. Then we will have the customer ID as ID again. Then we will have, let's say, total quantity of that particular order. So quantity, and we will use data type as an integer, non-nullable. Then what is the total of this particular order? So I will use the float as a data type over here. And again, in the end, I want some kind of status for that particular order. So we will have some status as a field, and I will have the data type called order status. And again, I will mark this as a non-nullable, and then we can like define this particular data type using the enum, since we are only having success and failed. So let's define this particular enum. In this, we will have success and failed. Okay, so that's all about like how we will write the GraphQL schema. So over here we have write one resolver query called customer, and that we are returning the collection called customer, and then we have defined the customer data type, and after that we have defined the order and the order status. So let's start the server, and I will show you like how we can consume this particular GraphQL query. So I'm starting using the Gradle tool. So till the time this application comes up, so I want to tell you like GraphQL provide out of the box very good GUI tool. Over there, we can play with the existing query, and we can also learn about the schema of this particular GraphQL API. Okay, so let's see. The server is, I think, up and running, and it's on 8080 and HTTP protocol. Okay, so to get that particular GUI of the GraphQL, we will hit the HTTP localhost followed by the GraphQL. So make sure we type the GraphQL we shouldn't write anything like GraphQL. Okay, so if all the things is up and running, so we will be presented by this particular GUI tool. So in the left part, we have the playground area where we can play with the existing GraphQL query in terms of mutation, resolver query, or subscription. Right, and on the extreme right top corner, we have the documentation. If we click on that, we will get all the type of query. So till now we have only written the resolver query, so we will only get the query out of that. If we click on the query, we will get the the resolver query which we have written. So till now we have already written the customer's query, and this customer's query is returning the collection of the customer as non-nullable. If you click on this, we will get the data type of this customer. If you click on the order, we will get the data type of the order. And if you click on the status, then we will get the status of the particular order status. And now if we click on this particular integer, so we will see like this is the scalar type. So these type are nothing but the leaf node data types which can't be described further. So, and apart from that, we can also create our own custom scalar data types as well if we want. But in this example, I'm not like creating any custom data type. So now I will show you like how we can write the resolver query over here. So to write the resolver query, we have to type the open and close curly brace, and in that, if we press the control space, if we are on the Windows operating system, it will pop up all the queries. So we have only written the customers query over here. So we will select the customers, and followed by we will provide the projection in terms like from this query, what kind of data type I want out of this. So I will provide name, then I will provide email, and for order, I will provide the projection in terms of status. And let's run this query and let's see like what we get out of this query. So if we hit this query, we got some error in terms of null pointer exception. So we can also see like this exception is wrapped under under the validation kind of wrapper. So GraphQL has one more feature out of the box. So it trimmed down our error boundary so that we can so we will come to know like, hey, the person has violated the GraphQL schema or not. So by looking this error, we will straightly come to know the developer has violated the GraphQL schema. So over here, this particular customer GraphQL resolver query can't return null, because in GraphQL schema we have mentioned like we can't return null. Either we can return empty collection or some data out of this. Okay, now we will write the resolver function to resolve this particular error. So let's move to the coding part, and for this to resolve, we will I will write one class. But before that, I want to explain some of the points which I forgot. So like before we head towards the resolver function, we have to like write the corresponding implementation for the corresponding data types which we have written in the GraphQL schema. So we have written the customer, order, and order status. And to save the time, I have already written those Java POJOs. So if I show you the customer DTO, so this has nothing but similar fields which we have in terms of GraphQL schema. So this is the this is the customer class for this customer data type, and we have order DTO which is representing the order data type for the schema. Okay, and that schema, this particular class has all the fields which we have in terms of GraphQL schema. So for, if you see, we have ID, customer ID, total quantity, total, and status. And then I have written the one enum for the order status. So that enum has exactly the same data which we have in terms of schema. So this is the bare minimum task we have to do before we write the resolver function. So now we will write one class called customer controller. So let's write customer controller. Okay, and I will demark this particular class as a controller using the Spring Boot dependency. And I will take the help of the GraphQL dependency, and using that dependency, I will try to write one the resolver function for the query. And for that, I will use the annotation called schema mapping. And in this, we have to provide like what is the type. Okay, so we will provide the type over here. So we are writing the query resolver. So we will provide the type as a query and the field name as a customer. So this name should be exactly same like this. So we are writing the customer resolver query. So field name should be customer. Now we will write the corresponding Java implementation over here. So I will write public, and I will return the collection of customer DTO. So this is the list of customer, and the name will be the customers. Okay, and now I'm returning the empty list out of this. So for now, I'm just returning the empty collection. So that's all this we have to write. This is the resolver function for the query which we define in the schema. So now let's restart the server. Okay. So meantime, is the server comes up, I can quickly recap like what we have done over here. So before that, we have written the corresponding Java POJOs for individual data types, which we have defined in terms of GraphQL schema. Then we have created one class called customer controller. I annotated with the @controller, and using the schema mapping, I have written one resolver function, and that I have defined the type as query and field as customer. I am returning empty list out of this. Now, if server is up and running, then we will refresh the GUI, and if we run the query again, we will get empty data out of this because we are returning the empty collection out of this. And before returning the actual data, I want to have some optional filter for this particular GraphQL query. Okay, so to define that filter, we will head towards to the GraphQL schema, and to write the filter, I will type the round parenthesis, and I will define the filter as a variable, and I will give the data type as a customer criteria. And I'm not demarking this as a non-nullable because I want this particular customer resolver query as optional. So I'm not using the exclamation mark, and then we will define this customer criteria. So over here, we will use the keyword called input, since this is the input request. So we won't use the type as a keyword. So instead we will use the input, and in this we will provide a name, and data type will be the string, and I want to make it as non-nullable. So if end user provide the filter, then that end user should have to provide some data in terms of name. Okay, now for this, we again have to write the corresponding Java implementation, and again I have written that particular class to save the time. And if you see, I have nothing but simple property called name of data type string. Okay. Now let's move to the customer controller, and we will try to use this particular request or in terms of filter. Since this is the input argument, so there is a annotation called argument. So we will use that annotation, and we will provide name for this. So we will provide the name as a filter, and this name should be similar to the name of the variable which we have in the GraphQL query. Okay, and then we will define the data type. So in Java, we have the customer criteria filter DTO, and we will give the name as a filter. Okay, and we will restart the application, and we will see like what are the impact we will see on the GraphQL user interface. So let's restart the application. And till the time this application comes up, I can quickly recap what we have done. Like we have defined one filter called customer criteria, and in the customer criteria, we have name as a input request, which we will get from the end user. And for that, and to write that corresponding Java implementation, we are using the annotation called @argument, and we are providing name as a filter similar to the variable name, and followed by the Java data type. Now the application has come up, so we will refresh this particular GUI tool. And if we go to the documentation now and click on the query, so we will see the extra bit of information in terms of filter. And if you click on the customer criteria, we will see name as a string, and which is non-nullable. So this is how the schema will look like once we have the filter in place. Now to consume that, we will again type the round parenthesis over here, and in this we will type the filter followed by the curly brace. In that we will provide again the projection details. So this filter is expecting the name. So over here we will type the Bob, and if we try to hit again, we will get the empty data, since we haven't written any resolver. We are not returning any thing out of the resolver function, right? So now this is the right time to like return the actual data for this particular resolver function. And again, to save time, I have written some of the code so that we can directly consume and we can return some data for that. So I have written some service layer and repository layer for the customer and the order data. So in customer service, I have exposed two methods. One method is find all, which takes the filter as a parameter, and I am using the customer repository. And from there, I am returning the data from the database. And over here, I have written the case insensitive likewise query. Apart from that, I have the save method, which will help us to save the data using the Hibernate ORM. And for if we see the order service, so in this, I have the customer order as a method, and it is taking the parameter called customer. So it will return orders for the corresponding customer. And to return the orders for the customer, I have written order repository, and there on that I have written one dummy code, which is returning on the fly orders for the corresponding customer. So this is all we have to write in terms of like how we are getting the data from the corresponding data sources. So to consume this particular customer service, I will inject this particular service into the this particular controller. So I will type private final. So these are just the jargons of the Spring Boot framework. So there is, if we know, we can easily understand this thing. Okay, so we will consume the customer service over here, and I will write the variable called customer service. And to inject this particular dependency, I will use the Lombok framework, and I will use the required arg constructor. Okay, so now we are all good with in terms of dependency injection. So instead of this empty collection, we will consume this this particular service, customer service, and we will hit the find all method, which we have written over there, and we will provide the filter parameter over here. So we are cool. We are good with the implementation part in terms of returning the data. So let's restart the application, and we will see like now how we will get how the data will look like when the application will come up. So to quickly recap, we have just injected one of the customer service, and we are just consuming their service to return the appropriate data out of that. So if now let's see the application is up or not. So application has come up. So if we refresh this GUI tool, and if we hit the query, so we are getting the empty because we don't have Bob customer in the database. So to confirm that, we can confirm using the S2DB console. So let's check like whether we have that particular customer or not. So if we see, we don't have any customer called Bob, but we have two instances of the John. So if we type the John instead of Bob, we should get some data out of that. So let's move ahead to the query area, and we will type the John, and we will hit the query. So now we are getting some data in terms of John Wright and John Snow, but we are not getting orders. And since this filter is optional, so if we remove this filter, so we should get all the data in terms of customer, whatever customer we have over there. So these are the things we have in terms of data. Okay, but over here, like we are seeing the orders as null because we haven't written any resolver function yet. So now we will try to write the resolver function, and we will see like how we can write the resolver function. So for writing the resolver function for the corresponding orders, I will write one. I will take the help of the schema mapping, and in type name, I will type the customer over here, because if we see the GraphQL schema, the orders reside in the customer data type. So this customer we can use over here, and in fields we will type the orders. Sorry. So we will type the orders, and we will name this particular function add orders, and we are returning the order DTO. Now, instead of this argument, we will accept the customer. So we will type the customer DTO over here, and we will provide the customer as a parameter. And to return a data, okay, sorry. So, and to return the orders for the particular customer, we will again inject the order service over here. So let's inject that particular order service over here. Okay, so we have injected the order service, and we will consume this order service to return the order for particular customer. So we have method called customer orders, and we will provide the customer as a parameter. And before running this particular, before I restart this application, I want to put one logger in this particular resolver function. So I will use the annotation called SL4J, and I will type the log.info, and I will type start, and I will type the customer, and I will use the customer dot get email. So like why I put the logger statement over here. So I wanted to show you like this resolver function will only get called when we demand for the orders in the customer query. So let's restart this particular application, and let's see like how we can like utilize this particular resolver function to optimize the GraphQL query. Okay, so till the time this application comes, we quickly recap. We have written one resolver function for the orders, and for that we have used the schema mapping, and we provide a type as the customer and field as the orders, and we are consuming order service to return the orders for individual customer. And we also put one logger statement, so we can see like this resolver function will only get called when we demand for the orders. So now the application is up and running. If we refresh this, okay, and if we run this query, so we will see some orders out of this. Okay, and I wanted to show you now like how this schema resolver function can be utilized to optimize the query. So I have cleared the buffer, and now I will remove this particular projection from here. And if I hit this query, I am not getting the orders, but we will also check like this particular resolver function is getting called or not. So by looking at the logs, we can say like this particular resolver function is not getting called at all. So let's uncomment the order, and again, I want to clear the buffer. So let's clear the buffer, and if we run this particular query, and if we see in the log, so we can see the logger statement like start customer and followed by the email ID. So we can conclude like this particular resolver function will get only called when we demand for that particular data in a resolver query. So this is how the resolver function can be utilized to optimize the GraphQL queries. So we have seen the resolver query, and we've seen how we can write the resolver function to optimize the query. Now we will see how we can write the mutation query. So for that, we will copy the same stuff, and instead of query, I will replace the query with the mutation, since we are writing the mutation query over here. And in this, we will expose one mutation query in terms of add customer. So we'll type the add customer, and we will take two input requests in terms of name and the email. And in return, it will return the customer data type again, and that will be a non-nullable. Now let's define the input request in terms of customer request, followed by the data type of customer request. Now I will make as a non-nullable, and I will define as a input customer request. And in this, we will take two, we will expect two arguments. So we will copy the name and email. So we will copy from the customer data type, and we'll put into the customer request. So now we don't have to write the corresponding Java implementation. We can leverage the customer DTO, which we have already written. So we will directly consume that customer DTO for this customer request. And to write the mutation query, we will again take the help of this schema mapping annotation. So let's write that. So instead of query in type name, we will type the mutation over here, and in field we will type the add customer, because we are writing the add customer as a mutation query. So we will replace the add customer with the add customer, and we will write this Java implementation. And by looking at the add customer, this is only returning the single customer. So I'm returning the customer DTO, and I will give the name as a add customer. And in the argument, we will provide customer request as a field name. So I will replace the filter with the customer request, and instead of customer criteria filter, we will again use the customer DTO, and I will give the name as a customer request, and I will utilize the save method of the customer service to save the data of the customer. Okay, so we are like we have like defined the Java and corresponding Java implementation. Let's restart the application. So again, the application is coming up. I can quickly recap. We have written a type called mutation. In that, we have created one mutation query called add customer. We have provided one input parameter called customer request, which expecting data in terms of name and email. And once everything is fine, this particular endpoint will return some data out of this. So now the server is up and running, so we can refresh the GraphQL tool. So like before utilizing that this particular query, I wanted to show you like what will be the extra information in the documentation part. So we can see like we have the mutation as an extra bit of information. So if we click on the mutation, we will see the add customer as a mutation query. If we click on the customer request, we will see the data type of the customer request. Now, before hitting this particular, before writing the mutation query, I will try to write the filter over here, so I can show you like that particular customer is there or not. So if I type Bob, and if I click on this particular request, so we are not getting anything. So now we will type the mutation query. So I have already written the mutation query. So to write the mutation query, we have to type the mutation keyword before the curly brace. And in that, we will provide the add customer and followed by all the required information. So we are having customer request as the input request. And in that, we will provide some information in terms of name and email. And if we click on this and everything is fine, we will get some data out of this. Right? Okay, so now we can assume like this data has been saved into the database. And now if we click this particular query, we will get the data for the Bob, and same we can confirm from the S2 database console. So if I click on the refresh, if I connect, and if I go to the customer, if I run the query, so now we can see that Bob has been added. Bob has been added into the database. So till now, like we have seen like how we can write the mutation query, how we can write the resolver query, and how we can optimize the resolver query. And we have also seen like we are getting exact data as per the request. So we are not getting more or less data, which we were having the issues in terms of the RESTful API. Okay, and now we can like discuss about the GraphQL, like how the GraphQL will help us to overcome the issues in terms of overfetching, underfetching, and like if we change the UI model at the UI side, then there shouldn't be any impact on the server side. So let's discuss using this particular GraphQL schema only. So like in the RESTful API, we get all the predefined and fixed data structure. But over here, we can define the data as per our requirement. So let's say in initial, I only want the name, and I only want order, and in the order, I only want the status. And if I run this, so we will get the information as per the projection. And in future, if I change the UI model and I add the email, and if I run this query, so we will get the data as we will get the data in terms of name and email. So if I change anything in terms of UI model, there is no impact on the middleware side if we have the defined schema in place. Now I wanted to show you like what will happen if I change something on the middleware side. So I will quickly change some of the stuff in the middleware. Okay, and instead of name, I will demark as a deprecated, and I will put some reason over here. Instead of this, use full name. Okay, and I will create one, I will add one new field over here called full name, and I'm giving as a data type as a string. And if and I will do some corresponding Java changes. So I will go to the customer DTO, and I will define one property called full name, and I will also pass that information in the constructor. Okay, now let's restart the application. So what I wanted to explain, like we have seen, like if we change UI model, then there is no impact in terms of middleware. But what if we change something on the middleware side? So do we get any impact on the UI or not? So over here, I have just deprecated property called name, and instead of that, I have added new property called full name. Okay, so if everything is up and running, so we can refresh the GUI tool. And now if we go to the documentation part, and if you go to the query part, and if you click on the customer, so now the name has been moved to the deprecated field. So if you click on the deprecated field, it will show you the information about the name. Now the name has been moved from the actual schema to the deprecated fields, and we can see like what is the region. So the region we have written, instead of this, use the full name. So by looking at the schema only, UI people can come to know like, hey, this particular name has been deprecated. So in future, I can avoid using this particular name. Instead that I can use the full name. So this is how the UI and middleware people can work independently, and ultimately it will help us to produce a faster product iteration. So if we click on this particular stuff, so we have restarted the application. So click on the write the query without the filter, and if we click if we run this query, we are still getting the name in terms of name, right? But if we hover on the name, we will get the information like this particular field has been marked as a deprecated one, and if we want, we can use the full name, and if we click on this, we will get the information in full name as well. So we have seen like how GraphQL will help us to overcome of the issue of the overfetching, underfetching, and we also seen like if we change the UI model at the UI side or the middleware side, we won't get any impact on the either side, right? So by using this, we can produce the faster we can release faster products out of this. Okay, so now let's move on some of the more reasons for to like the GraphQL. So apart from that, we can evolve the API without impacting the existing version of the GraphQL schema. So we have already seen like we on the fly, as per the requirement, we can add new fields, we can deprecate the fields. Okay, and by this we don't have to worry about the UI. The UI will continue to work as it is. But if we want this kind of feature in the RESTful API, then again we will be ending up in the creating new endpoints in terms of v1, v2, and v4, and so forth, right? So to consume this, UI have to keep the information about those extra bit of new endpoints, and this will this will require to have some kind of coding efforts on the UI side as well. So like we have seen what are the benefits of the GraphQL and how the GraphQL will help us to overcome what we have issues in terms of RESTful APIs. So now we will move on to the end part where we will see like where we can avoid the GraphQL. And before this, I want to say like the GraphQL is not the replacement for the RESTful API. Instead, is just the alternative for the RESTful APIs. Okay, so we can avoid the GraphQL in certain scenario. Let's say when we have the easy way out. So let's say where we have the very simple requirement, and we have only one web service, and that web service is returning only a very simple data structure. And there we have only a limited amount of data fields. So we can avoid using this sophisticated architecture. But again, this is the judgmental. It again depend on the team to team or our judgment call. Okay, and we should avoid the GraphQL if we have the requirement in terms of HTTP web caching. So we all know like HTTP web caching can be implemented if we have the get URLs in place, but GraphQL works on the post method, so it is difficult to implement the HTTP web caching if we have the GraphQL implementation in place. Apart from that, like we shouldn't directly use the GraphQL as a replacement for the RESTful API. Instead of that, we continue to write the RESTful API, and we should have some aggregation layer in terms of backend for front end, and GraphQL is the best candidate to write the backend for front end. From there, UI can consume the GraphQL API, and by this we can avoid the issues in terms of RESTful API if we consume directly from the UI side. And last point is about if we have the requirement of the upload and download. So we all know like upload and download involves the binary stream, and GraphQL works in terms of data node, which can be represented in terms of relationship, which we have already seen. And on this, GraphQL has divided communities. Some says we should use, some says we don't. But as a personal, in my personal experience, I would say we should not use the upload and download feature. So that's all in terms of GraphQL in practice. So over to you, Srikant.
Yeah. Thank you, Gaurav. I have two questions which have come our way.
Okay.
The first is, how do I disable GraphQL? I mean, if it is to be done in production. Any thoughts on that?
Okay, so like to disable the GUI tool on the production, so we can do by providing some of the configuration. So for that, this particular dependency have some kind of configuration in place. So to disable that, we have to provide GraphQL and followed by enable. And instead of true, we have to write the false. So if we write the false, and if we restart this particular application, then, and if we try to access that particular GUI tool, then we won't be able to get that.
Okay.
And apart from that, if you want to have the different host URL, you can also provide that host URL. So currently we have the GraphQL over here. We can provide different path as well for getting that GUI tool.
And the second one is, it's an interesting question, which is there any standard naming conventions, say for mutation queries, and whether GraphQL prescribes anything actually in practice?
So as per my knowledge, we don't have any kind of that nomenclature, but if we want, we can read about the GraphQL documentation for like GraphQL learn schema. From this portal, we can learn if we want to learn about like how we should write the nomenclature. But as per my experience, GraphQL doesn't say like how you have to follow the nomenclature for that.
Good, Gaurav. Yeah. So these were the two which are coming our way. So wish to thank you, Gaurav. It was a very insightful session on GraphQL. And if any of our viewers have any questions, please leave a comment in the LinkedIn post, and we'll be more than happy to pick it up and respond to it. Thank you once again.
Thank you.